Since attending COP13 in Bali in 2007, you have been to, I believe, 8 Conference of the Parties meetings, is that correct?
About that, yeah, maybe even 9. I lost count.
And these meetings are the International Decision-Making Conference of the United Nations Framework for Climate Change. Can you tell us what happens at these meetings? Why are they significant? What are they trying to achieve? And how do they actually work?
So basically, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change started in 1992 in Rio, and it was a coming together of every country around the world, around 195 countries, to say we're going to take climate change seriously, we're going to take actions to avoid dangerous climate change. And that means reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and they mainly come from digging up and burning fossil fuels. And so every year, all the countries come together in a different location and tease out the next set of rules and policies to help them undertake those actions. So you imagine 195 countries coming together and every time agreeing on every little thing. It is slow going, it is incremental, there's this grinding pace to it all. There's lots of backroom deals, but if there's enough pressure and enough goodwill, then you see these things come together.
Last November, you went and travelled to Glasgow for COP26, this time as a commentator, as part of your role with the Australia Institute. What was it like going back in your new capacity, unshackled as it were, from a diplomatic role?
Yeah, look, it's liberating to be able to just say what you think and to call things out as they are. So I went officially as an observer, and my role as I saw it was to translate what was happening, what was the Australian government doing, and what did it actually mean? Not just for the Australian public here, but also for international counterparts as well. And clarify that Australia wasn't going to get the kind of applause that it wanted because it really wasn't being a goodwill actor. And Australia is a big emitter. This is the thing, like the federal government will say, Australia's only 1.3% of global emissions, but that still puts Australia in the top 10% of global emitters around the world. According to Australian Institute research, Australia is the 3rd largest exporter of fossil fuels in the world after Russia and Saudi Arabia. At COP26, the UK said, we want to consign coal to history, and Australia was forced to actually confront that.
Okay, so now you're with the Australia Institute. What do you do as part of your role, and what work does the Australia Institute do?
So the Australia Institute is a think tank. What that means is it does research that will hopefully make an impact. So whereas an academic institution can progress knowledge for knowledge's sake, a think tank is there to influence public policy for the better. And my role is to do that on climate change. And so I'm lucky enough to have a team of fantastic researchers who work specifically on climate and more broadly with some economists. What you do is research things that you want to see happen and find ways to either kick that debate off or change that debate if it's already happening. And we're based in Canberra, I'm based in Canberra, so we're just down the road from Parliament House because you need to be involved in the political process. If you're not involved, it will happen to you. And climate change, for better or worse, is politicized.
So while perhaps federal policy isn't really changing, we're in this sort of stalemate situation over the last few years. Nothing much has progressed in terms of executing change on the ground. But Australian attitudes, the Australia Institute has found, is changing. Every year since 2007, the Australia Institute has released the Climate of the Nation report, detailing how people across the country feel about what they understand about climate change. Tell me about some of the key highlights and how attitudes towards climate change have changed over time.
It is fortunate that we've had this long-running survey, the longest-running survey on attitudes to climate, and what is clear is the concern for climate change continues to grow year on year. So just last year in 2021, I think 82% of Australians are concerned that climate change will cause more bushfires. 78% are concerned it will cause more floods. Now, like the majority of Australians believe that climate change is causing impacts right now. This is not a future generation problem, and you can see why in the last 3 years with the Black Summer bushfires, with the most recent floods. These are all supercharged. These are exacerbated by climate change. But we've found there's a stronger appetite for solutions. And that's good because the economics are changing now. No longer is climate change seen solely as a burden. The economics around renewable energy have changed, around transportation, electric vehicles, around a whole variety of solutions have changed as well. And so the appetite to actually explore this space is changing too.
Let's talk about those solutions, because you seem to have a very simple 3-step solution to climate change, if that's even possible.
Because climate change is easy. It's easy to solve climate change. It's not hard. So climate change as a technological fix is pretty straightforward. Get to 100% renewable electricity. Then make more electricity than you need. Just go further, 200, 300, 400, 500%. Just keep making as much electricity as you can until it becomes super cheap. Then electrify everything. Electrify your cars, your buses, your industry, your homes. Get off gas for your water and your heating and your cooking. And then let's stop cutting down trees and plant more trees. That's it. You've solved climate change. It's that simple. It's an ABC to solving climate change. And we're doing all right. Despite the federal government, we're doing all right because there's enough momentum right now that you'll see the country get to 100% renewable energy.
And so what are the technological hurdles in order to shift to a renewable energy economy? And do these technologies already exist?
The technologies exist. The hurdles are the upfront cost. It is a bit more expensive to get an electric vehicle. It's a bit more expensive to get a heat pump. And that will be especially hard on those who don't have the upfront cost. So the way to do that is you make sure that you can carry everyone with you. Governments have a role to play in providing incentives or interest-free loans so that those who most benefit from having cheaper power bills can actually afford the tools to do that, and emissions get saved along the way.
So at the moment, your approach is the only way to really get some sort of action from this current government is international pressure.
It's a sandwich is how I think of it. So you've got a good amount of international pressure from the top, and then you've got the domestic pressure from the bottom. That's the grassroots pressure. That's from individuals and organizations and state governments. And you're seeing this now with the state government here, which is a Liberal National Coalition, which actually has a plan to phase out a number of coal-fired power stations early, to build renewable energy zones. It has some of the best incentives for electric vehicles. So it's not about a political party. It's about the ideas that they push and whether they're right or wrong when it comes to climate. And so I'm hopeful because there is more pressure from the bottom and more pressure from the top, and hopefully that makes for a tasty climate solution.